Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all enjoying GBL, whatever you're choosing to play, or if you're choosing to skip this week because the two cups that are currently in rotation are a little bit difficult to build Pokemon for. You have the Summer Cup Ultra League Edition, which is full of XL Pokemon, and you have Master League, which is basically full of pay-to-win legendaries. So I totally understand if some of you are maybe taking the week off. However, in Summer Cup, there are quite a few non-XL Pokemon that I think you can build and make work. For example, Bellibolt, that's a non-XL Pokemon, or it might require like around 40 XL candies, which is pretty easy to get. There's Kingdra. Now my Kingdra is an XL Kingdra, but you can run a non-XL Kingdra. You can also run Swampert, Typhlosion. Drampa is a fun pick. Now yesterday I was trying to make Drampa work, but unfortunately it was not great, or the games didn't go great for me. I did manage to land a couple of flies on some unsuspecting Virizions, so that was fun, but overall I did end up dropping with Drampa. But that's okay because I ended up building the Shadow Victreebel, which took all my Stardust, by the way. It was around 500,000 Stardust to get it to Ultra League CP, but it was so worth it because it performed really well and we managed to climb back up to the 2,400s. And right now 2,400s are on leaderboards. However, I did drop a little bit afterwards. It's totally fine. We can still get back up there. So today I have a Summer Cup Ultra League Edition video for you guys because there is no way in hell that I am going to touch Master League until I have the new Zacian or Zamazenta. They are everywhere in Master League right now and I do not have access to those Pokemon yet. So until after Global Go Fest, I'm just gonna play whatever else is in rotation. Thankfully, I do love Ultra League and I am so excited that there is finally a limited cup for the Ultra League. We haven't gotten one in so long, and this was pretty fun. The team that ended up getting me to the 2,400s is Shadow Victreebel on the lead with Tentacruel and Kingdra in the back. For the most part, the Kingdra was a safe swap, and I noticed a lot of people today were running Victreebel on the lead with two water types in the back. However, I also noticed that more people were running Tentacruel counters, so I was running into a lot of ground types, and I was running into a lot more Bellibolts than I was seeing yesterday. So I did end up swapping the Tentacruel out for Swampert today, and that did well as well. So if you want to try the team without Tentacruel, you can try it with Swampert. I also saw a lot of people running the team with Jellicent, but I have no idea how people are making Jellicent work with so many Sucker Punch Bellibolts in the meta. It's just so frustrating. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about the team. In terms of weaknesses, the team doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, but Steel types are going to give you a little bit of a hard time. So for example, if you see a Ferrothorn on the lead, you just stay in with your Victreebel and you go straight for Sludge Bomb and shield the Flash Cannons. Shadow Scissor was another lead I was struggling a little bit against, but if you see Shadow Scissor on the lead, you just swap into your Kingdra. Alright, that's all I have to say. Let's jump into these battles. Now, in this game, we are up against a Zapdos on the lead. For Zapdos leads, I will just stay in and go straight Leaf Blade. If I can land one Leaf Blade, it actually does so much damage. You saw we were able to take the Zapdos out with the acids from Victreebel and one Leaf Blade. However, we did have to invest both of our shields. Now, my opponent brings in a Virizion. I'm able to get it very low with our Kingdra, but then I have to take it out with my Victreebel, and my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Typhlosion. We are in a good position here, I believe, because I think I swapped out with a Sludge Bomb loaded on my Victreebel, and that should be enough to take this Typhlosion out. So they're going to be able to take us out here, and I am going to go straight for that Sludge Bomb, and this will KO the Typhlosion, and we take that win. GG's to our opponent. Now, this was the first set that we played with this team, and we got a nice 4-1, which was a breath of fresh air after going on a lose streak with Drampa. We managed to get ourselves out of the 2200s, and now moving on to the next battle, we are going to be up against a Trevenant on the lead. Okay, a very tricky lead for us, but I'm going to go straight Leaf Blade. I'm going to build up to the Sludge Bomb, hoping that I can get a shield from my opponent. We do. I'm going to go ahead and shield myself as well, and at this point, I think I should just be going straight Leaf Blade, but I do go for the Sludge Bomb here because Leaf Blade is not quite enough to KO from that range. But now I think it would come really close to KOing because Trevenant is very glassy. But my opponent manages to catch the Leaf Blade on a Skeledirge. Okay, I'm gonna bring in Kingdra, and I'm just hoping that this Skeledirge is not running Disarming Voice. It's running Shadow Ball, which is still really going to hurt our Kingdra. But we do manage to take them out with an Octazooka. Now here, my opponent has to throw a move from Trevenant, otherwise I was going to be able to Dragon Breath them down. Now I'm going to bring in Tentacruel, and unfortunately for me, my opponent's final Pokemon is a Swampert. But it looks like they're not running Earthquake, so it is going to be running Hydro Cannon and Sludge, both which are resisted on Tentacruel. And I think I end up doing something really stupid here. I'm going to go for another Scald, which is not enough to KO the Swampert, and then I attempt to catch a move on my Victreebel, and I don't know why I did that. This was very risky because my opponent's attack was debuffed, and it would have just been safer for me to stay in with my Tentacruel, but we get so lucky that we survive the Hydro Cannon, make it to the Scald, take our opponent out, and take that win. On to the next battle. This one is just going to be straight RPS. We lead Victreebel into a Swampert. Our opponent swaps out into a Golisopod, but I do go for a Leaf Blade before bringing in Tentacruel just to make the matchup against Tentacruel a little bit easier for us. That Leaf Blade does so much damage to this Golisopod, and at this point I've decided I am going to go for a full Poison Sting down against this Golisopod, but my opponent swaps back out into that Swampert. I have so much energy built up on my Tentacruel, I'm going to be able to spam out these Scalds. I even get an attack drop, and because I got the attack debuff, I can bring in Kingdra and no shield the Sludge, and then my opponent goes ahead and top left. Actually, this opponent is my teammate, and they contacted me afterwards and told me they had a fire type in the back and they had no chance of winning that. So GG's to our opponent. Unfortunate for them that that was so RPS. Moving on to the next battle, the game is not going to be as nice to us because we are up against a Turtonator on the lead, which is a terrible lead for our Victreebel. I swap out immediately into our Kingdra, and our opponent brings out a Credilli, but we get so lucky because we get the attack drop on the Octazooka. That means that the next move from Credilli is not going to be enough to KO our Kingdra, and we can make it to an Outrage and win switch. Now my opponent's final Pokemon is a Swampert. I am going to go ahead and shield the Sludge on our Victreebel from Swampert, and I'm just watching out for a catch from the opponent. They attempt to catch on the Turtonator. I swap immediately into our Tentacruel, and I don't think I'm going to shield anything on Tentacruel. I'm just going to go for these Scalds to try to take this Turtonator out. The next Dragon Pulse is still not going to be enough to take us out. And because my opponent has 2 shields left, I needed to go for that full Poison Sting down to come out of that matchup with so much energy on our Tentacruel. That means we could go for a Scald on the Swampert. They don't shield it. I was really hoping to get a shield out of them. But then we manage to acid the Swampert down with our Victreebel and take that win. GG's to our opponent. Now moving on to the next battle, we are up against that Shadow Scissor, which is going to be a little bit of a problem for this team. I swap into Kingdra and I let the first Night Slash go, and then our opponent catches the Octazooka on their Tentacruel. I was really hoping for at least an attack debuff, but we don't get it. They go for a Scald on our Kingdra, which is still not going to be enough to take us out. It is quadruple resisted, but I do manage to reach an Outrage, which my opponent shields. Okay, at least we get a shield from them. I am going to return the shield here because our opponent goes for a Blizzard, and then I'm going to build up as much energy as I can before throwing this Leaf Blade, expecting my opponent to bring that Scissor back in, so I swap immediately into our Tentacruel. But their final Pokemon is a Cradilly, unfortunately. I think my opponent messes up here because otherwise I should not have won this game. I'm going to go for a Scald, and then I am just going to farm up as much energy as I can, let the next move go, swap out into my Victreebel, and I try to go immediately for the Leaf Blade, but it does not work. However, my opponent just stays in with their Cradilly instead of swapping out into Scissor. I'm able to go for a Sludge Bomb to take the Cradilly out, and then I almost have back-to-back Scalds for the Scissor. We take their final shield. The next Scald is enough to KO, and we actually take that win. All my opponent had to do was swap out of their Cradilly into Scissor, and I think they could have won that. But either way, that is going to be a 5-0 in that set. And this one does get us into the 2400s. I was really close to Veteran in Ultra League, in Open Ultra League. I made it to like 2470, and then unfortunately I dropped. But anyways, moving on to the next set. These next two matches, by the way, are so close. Victreebel is going to live with 1 HP in the end, but we are up against a Cradilly in this first one, and I am going to have to invest both of my shields into Victreebel. I mean, for the most part, that's what I've been doing. And we end up shielding the Rock Tomb, and then we swap simultaneously. They swap into a Shadow Tentacruel, which is not great for us because Sledge Wave really hurts, and I have no shields left. And we bring in our Kingdra, and they actually no shield the Outrage, so we're able to take them out. But our opponent's final Pokemon is a Shadow Victreebel of their own. So I bring in my Victreebel, I go for the Sludge Bomb just to take their final shield, and now I can come in with Tentacruel and hope that I can make it to a Sludge Wave before the opponent can make it to 3 Leaf Blades. Now they bring in Cradilly here, and I'm not going to be able to Poison Sting them down, so I have to go for a Scald. And unfortunately, we're not going to be left with enough energy to reach the Sludge Wave before CMP, so Victreebel is going to win CMP over our Tentacruel. However, our Victreebel is able to survive with 1 HP and make it to that Leaf Blade, and we still manage to get away with the win there. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to get an amazing lead of Virizion, but our opponent swaps out into a Jellicent. Okay, now I could have just stayed in here, but I was thinking in the back of my mind that maybe they would have a Belly Bolt in the back because a Virizion lead usually has a Belly Bolt in the back. So I end up swapping out after landing 1 Leaf Blade on this Jellicent into my Kingdra. Now the problem is, if I do not align my Victreebel to their Belly Bolts, if they have a Belly Bolt in the back, then it is going to be up against our Tentacruel. So we are still in a tricky situation here, and my Victreebel is going to be taking a little bit of extra damage from this Virizion. So they managed to get a move off. I am going to go for the Leaf Blade against their very low HP Jellicent, and like I called it, there it is, that Belly Bolt that I was afraid of. I'm going to go for a Leaf Blade, take my opponent's final shield, and all I can do here is hope that I could at least get an attack debuff. If I can debuff their attack, then maybe Victreebel can still make it to a move, because 2 Scalds are not going to be enough to take this Belly Bolt out. We make it to the next Scald. We get the attack debuff. Now let's see what's going to happen. They go for a Zap Cannon to KO us. And again, Victreebel is able to survive with 1 HP, make it to that Leaf Blade, take the Belly Bolt out, and give us the win. Now on to the next match. We're not gonna be as lucky with the lead because we get a Shadow Scissor. I swap immediately into my Kingdra, and our opponent actually stays in and builds up energy and then swaps out into a Belly Bolt. Now we do manage to take a shield from them. Unfortunately, we throw the Outrage, and I go for the Octazooka on the next move, really hoping for an attack debuff, but we don't even get the attack debuff, so it's really not going well for us. Now I'm gonna bring my Victreebel back in, but our opponent has built up to a Zap Cannon, and I don't want to use any of my shields because of how much energy the scissor has, and I'm really hoping that my Tentacruel is going to be able to get this win for us. They are going to go for a move here. I think, I go ahead and shield it. I thought it might be a Trailblaze. And our opponent's final Pokemon is a Heliolisk running Mudslap. So we are definitely not going to win this. I go ahead and shield the Parabolic Charge. I'm going to go for that Scald, but our opponent has a shield left. They let it go anyways. Saving the shield for Scissor is the right call. And I'm not going to be able to make it to 2 Scalds. So I'm just going to go ahead and top left. Now on to the next battle. We are up against a Tentacruel on the lead, which is not a bad lead for us. I am going to go for a Leaf Blade, but I think after going for the Leaf Blade, I am going to swap into my Kingdra just so that I could draw out any potential Belly Bolts. Now I do end up shielding the Sludge Wave because it does a lot of damage, and our opponent is staying in, which is telling me that the backline probably doesn't like Kingdra. We get the attack drop on the Octazooka, which is really nice. That means the next Sludge Wave is not going to do as much damage. But then they bring in a Drampa. Okay, I am going to bring in Tentacruel because our Victreebel is not going to like these Dragon Breaths. And I am going to go for a Scald, which is not enough to take them out. So I have to take another Swift from this Drampa. They get us into the red, and our opponent's final Pokemon is a Gastrodon. Okay, I have a chance here, but our opponent has a shield left, so I have to watch out for a potential catch, which they try to do, but I keep farming energy, which means that I will be able to reach 2 Leaf Blades for the Gastrodon, one to take their final shield, and the second one will land, fully KOing the Gastrodon and giving us that win. On to the next battle, we are going to be up against a Bellibolt on the lead. I'm really hoping that it's not running Sucker Punch, but it is. Unfortunately, with Sucker Punch, it kind of destroys our Victreebel, but they do let the first Leaf Blade go, which is good, and then they actually give up the lead, which is nice for us. I can go for a Leaf Blade against this Critterly, and then I am going to bring in my Kingdra. I'm not going to shield anything, so I am going to have to take 2 Rock Tombs from the Critterly. Unfortunately, I want to save my shields for our Victreebel, which is not really healthy anymore, but still I want to save shields for it because I am going to have to protect it against this Bellibolt. Now bringing that back in, I am going to go ahead and invest a shield because I'm way too low. I cannot take any moves. I go for a Leaf Blade here. Let's see what our opponent decides to do. They shield. Okay, I use my final shield here, and then I am going to go for a Leaf Blade. Now, we don't have any shields left, and I am not going to be able to make it to a Scald before our opponent can make it to a Parabolic Charge. So unfortunately, we have to take all that damage, and our opponent's final Pokemon is a Tentacruel of their own. So it looks like it is going to be a lost match for us. I was really hoping I would at least get an attack debuff. I did get the attack debuff, but it looks like 1 more Scald will be enough to take us out. I also don't think I'm able to take them out with this Leaf Blade, which is really annoying. I think if I had been able to KO them with a Leaf Blade, then I might have had a chance, but our opponent is going to be taking the win. And it's still going to be a positive set. That is going to be a 3-2. We get a nice little Kyogre as a reward. And that is going to be the end of our video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like my content, please consider subscribing. Maybe leave a like. It helps me out so much. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye bye.